So, we're going to talk about disincarnation. And the disincarnation as death, as we see, for us that we are spiritists and we believe in the immortality of our soul, so it's just a passage for us. It's really complicated. So disincarnation is the process where the spirit leaves the body. So we always have to remember that we are spirits with a body, not a body with a spirit. Because as spirits, we are immortal. And we're going to have many experiences, many bodies in different situations, in different the situations that we need, depending on our lives. We're going to come not just as women, not just as men. So let's remember that this body belongs to us just for a period of time here on earth, but we are spirits. We are immortals. And because of the ending of the life, so disincarnation is the process where the spirit leaves the body because of the ending of the life of the body, of all the energy and everything that makes the life possible in the body, keeping the perispirit. The spirit continues to live in the spiritual world. Remembering that our perispirit that connects our spirits to our body, and the perispirit, that's a kind of matter, very subtle, and the perispirit is responsible to maintain this image that we have on our last life. So a spirit can show him as a spirit on any image that he wants, but usually we maintain our last incarnation, the image of our last incarnation. But of course, they can come in different images, and sometimes they can deceive some people if they want to deceive. But like I said, usually we keep the last image that we had in our last life. So the separation of the soul from the body. The perispirit separation from the body occurs slowly. It's a process when you don't just, how can I say, you don't break. You start disconnecting, like you have a lot of wires and you start disconnecting these wires. That's how this disconnection happens. So it's nothing very, how can I say, yes.
It's quick.
It's slow because it's like disconnecting one wire at a time until you disconnect. You don't cut, you don't break like this. So this process occurs from the feet through the head, being the brain the last one to be unconnected. During this process, the person usually has a vision of important moments of his or her life. So let's remember that's why it's very important to be in praying when someone is really ill, to be in peace, and especially if you are losing someone that you love a lot, and you have to be very conscious about all energy that you are, how can I say, creating in the environment while this process is happening, because it can somehow be, how can I say, prejudicial. Yeah, yeah. To disturb the person can be disturbing for the person. And that's why when you have the, how can I say, it's not cremation, the cremação, yeah, cremation, you usually need to wait for 72 hours to cremate the body, because this process is so long. So you have to be sure that the perispirit is totally unconnected from the body. So if you don't respect that time, it might not be totally disconnected. And I could say, especially with the suicidals, you have to be very careful with cremation, I think, because we know that's a whole different process of disconnection. So, what else? Let's remember. After this incarnation process, like I said here, on the last moments, the person usually has an image of the most important moments of his life. Many people describe these moments when they start like having all those flashes of all the major moments of his life. And after the disincarnation process, the spirit suffers a process of perturbation. It can be long, it can be short. It depends on how disconnected from the matter the spirit is, depends on his level of knowledge about a spiritual life, or we say how attached he is to things, matter things and passions and all those feelings. So some people can stay just for some hours, some days, and some can stay for many years in this process of perturbation. And this process of perturbation is that process that you don't really understand what's happening, and you don't recognize the place you are, you don't recognize you as a spirit yet, and you don't understand the whole process. Like the word says, perturbation. You don't have an idea of what's really happening. So depending on the level of involvement, and especially on the level of attachment to the person has to matter things, to people. Let's not think about, when you say matter things, that's just material things, that we are talking about people. When you're really attached to some people or a place or anything, that can be a cause of perturbation. Okay, so all the process of disconnection happens and you disincarnated. So after the disincarnation process, the spirit have this process.
They say that this process occurs from the feet through the head. It's just an expression, right? It's like it's a slow.
Yeah, what they mean is that what they say is that the disconnection on the brain, this last one. The last one. I wouldn't say that is a rule. I think it depends on how is the spirit, but usually the brain that controls everything is the last one to be disattached. That's why he says from the feet to the brain. But what he means is that the brain is the last one because it controls everything. That's what we can say. Let's see. What represents and influence in this process? So what's going to become this process? An easy process or a hard process? Of course, everyone is afraid of dying because it's something that we study but we don't know exactly. We don't remember from our previous lives. And everything that is mysterious make us feel this way about it. So we are afraid most of the time. So what represents an influence during the process of disincarnation? So the type of death. This is definitely the most influence situation, because you can have a death just for being old, a natural death, because your body just stopped working because of how old you are, or you can have, for example, a violent situation, a car accident, a murder, or any kind of violent death, or a suicide. That's another kind of very complicated death. I would say that for being old or from a disease, it's easier because you have time to process and to be prepared for this moment. And during an accident, for example, you have all your vital fluid, life is on that speed and something, and when you less expect, you're gone. I think this process of perturbation is a lot longer when you have a violent death. And so it depends on the situation of the death, definitely. And of course, like I said before, the evolution degree of the spirit. It depends not exactly on what you believe, but it depends on how good you are and the good things that you did and how moral evolved you were on earth. We had some, how can I say, experiences with spirits that came, and what we notice is that the person usually goes to a place that symbolizes what she believed on earth. So, for example, if I am a spiritist and I have the merit, I probably would go to a colony, or Nosso Lar, maybe some colony, because this is what I believe. But if I am a Catholic, I usually go to a place with a priest, with some nuns, because that symbolizes for me. So people usually go to places on the spiritual world that symbolizes for him what he believed on earth. No?
It's so confusing now.
What are you confusing about?
No, so this spiritual word that he said, the person sees nuns and priestess, they're nothing but spirits too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yes, of course, yes, yes. Sometimes when we are helping a spirit in our mediumship, for example, and he was very Catholic, instead of a nurse coming rescue him, sometimes they bring a priest. Sometimes they bring, we say, Franciscano. The spirits usually come as an image what the person believed, to help him to readapt in this whole situation. So it depends on the evolution. But what I say as evolution, as I say a moral evolution, how good the person was, how he deserved to be helped in the spiritual world. Okay? So the spiritual help. Some friends and relatives usually come to help the spirit in this process, the process of disconnection of the perispirit. It's not unusual. Some people say, oh, I saw my mom, oh, I saw my father, he was here. I remember my aunt, when she passed away, she saw a woman, and she wasn't my sister in this incarnation, but she's my sister. So a family member from the spiritual world came to help her, to how can I say, welcome her. And she said, you don't know because she's not my sister from this incarnation, but she's my sister from the spiritual world. So it's very common when the person's in that process to see relatives and people that pass it away that come to welcome and to help in this process of the disconnection. And everyone receives the help, unless, of course, the spirit has some compromises with inferior spirits. And this might happen. It's very common for the obsessors to be waiting outside the hospital, outside the windows. And the good spirits, of course, they make a whole protection while they're doing all the disconnection, all this process, so they can't come, but they keep outside the window watching the process and waiting for the spirit. And you could say, but how God can permit this? He can. He permits because we have the law of cause and effect. And if we did bad things, we have to fix. And we're going to have those, how we say, prosecutors following us. So what can we do? Pray for forgiveness and try to change. But this happens a lot. On many books, André Luiz, he helped a lot in this process of the disincarnation of many people. He was helping. Sometimes he was just observing to learn how to be this process. And he tells on the books about those inferior spirits that were outside the bedroom, outside the house, sometimes on watching from on the window. From the window, he would tell. He tells on the books that they wait for the person to disincarnate, and they follow. Sometimes they make them slaves. It depends on the situation. It depends. So, if we want to be welcome, we need to fix everything. We need to become better. We need to have the merit to receive all the good help from them. After the death, what happens? So after the disconnection of the spirit from his material body, the spirit maintains his individuality with virtues and defects. So let's remember, we don't become better or a good person just because we are not in the physical body anymore. We continue being who we are because we take with us our mind, our virtues, everything that we learned, everything that we did, so we don't become saints just because we pass. And the good ones stay happy with their friends, and the bad ones suffer the consequences of their act. And when we talk about the consequences, we have many consequences. Like I said, we have all those enemies that come back and want revenge from us. And especially we have our conscience. It's very common after the disconnection from our bodies. As spirits, we remember who we were, and we remember what we were supposed to do here on earth. And then we have a huge process of heavy conscience, I would say. And it's really hard when you see all the plans you did and how you failed. So I would say that all this process that we call umbral, I would say that is all this conscious process that we have, and that how can I say somehow puts us in that situation of those regions, inferior places, but it's our conscience, and that's why it's so hard to get out of there. No one can get out of there until ask for forgiveness, remember God, and change somehow. Until you don't do that, you can't get out of that place, because this place is on your mind, on your conscience. So this is the process when we say suffer the consequence. It's not that someone's going to get you and throw you on the place. No, you go with your mind, You go there with your conscience. And that's something that you can't change unless you really want to compromise and change yourself. And through the spirit, the spirit maintain, like I told you, the image of his last reincarnation. Unless he has a good reason to change, otherwise he keeps this. Of course, when he goes to the bad places and when he starts getting attached to all those bad spirits, and sometimes they want to make them look horrible to the other ones, so they can change themselves to horrible creatures because they want. But usually we keep the last image of our reincarnation. And what we always hear about it, especially when we have when we dream about the person, when we have those encounters during our sleep, I don't know if you already had this opportunity, you notice that the person looks a little bit more younger. It has something. The person keeps the image, but something changes. It's different somehow. It looks younger. It looks a little bit different from the last time you see. Of course, the last time we usually see a person, she's sick or she's somehow. But in the spirit world, they are younger, a little bit younger. And what else could we talk about this incarnation? Do you have any doubts or something that we could?
I would have something to share about that.
So share.
I was reading the New York Times today. Somebody left the paper on the seat.
Mhm.
And there
Você
was
quer desligar?
an artist.
Uhum.
He does portrait, and he has an exhibit in Houston
Uhum.
at the museum. And he was saying that he's from New York. He's in the early 60s, born in the early 60s. And he used to travel a lot to India.
Uhum.
And he go to these places where they cremate people.
Uhum.
See them. And so
Uhum.
he bring those people back here.
Ah, okay.
That's
Mm.
incredible.
You mean he sees the spirits?
The spirit already.
While all the ceremonies being.
The cremation, after the cremation.
Okay.
Souls.
Yeah, it's cultural. They have. I don't know how much time do they wait for the cremation. I have no idea. But this time of 72 hours, I think it was Chico Xavier who told people that the Emmanuel told him that we should wait for 72 hours to be sure that all the disconnection was made. So I think in Brazil it's not very common, but here's very common. And just to check, we know that the suicidals, they spend more time attached to their body because most of the time when they commit the suicidal, they have a lot of fluid, vital fluid. Most of the time it wasn't time yet for their death. So they have all this fluid, and until this fluid goes away, they get attached to the body. So I keep imagining in a case of cremation how hard it might be, because they tell all the time that they feel all the putrefaction. They feel all the worms eating. They feel. So I imagine that they can feel the fire. I have no idea. But probably if they feel all the process, so.
There's a book called Memories of a Suicide.
Yeah, this book. Mm-hmm.
It's being translated to English already.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Describes
Mm-hmm.
details what happened to them.
Yes. Of course, we have, yes. There is one question in the Spirits book that talks about this and talks about India and this rule that how do I say viúva? Widow. Oh, today I'm horrible. So they said that the widows, some of them go to the pita, to the fire with the husband when they die, and they suicide in this situation. And it's cultural. And there is a question in the Spirit's book about this. And then the Spirit says that they don't suffer that much as a suicide because of being cultural. It's something that they don't have a choice. They have to because it's cultural, and that's how they were raised. So there is not a real intention. It's different. So the way that in the spiritual world, the way that they are received is different because of all this cultural situation. It's different from a person that just wants to commit a suicide because doesn't want to live anymore. So it all depends on the intention. And even with let's remember about André Luiz. He stayed 8 years in the umbral because he was considered a suicidal, unconscious suicidal, but he was considered because the way of life that he took, the smoking, the drinks and everything, and he was considered. So I think that many of us was sometime in our lives, previous lives, considered maybe unconscious suicidals. Thank God we don't remember, and now we have a new opportunity to do things right and to be prepared for our disincarnation. It's something that we are never prepared, and it's the only thing that we know for sure that's going to happen. We don't know when, but we know that for sure sometime you're going to disincarnate.